in your particular discipline, like what I see from you, like on Instagram, like good stuff is kind of like we talked about just before we went live. Is I notice a lot of dog trainers that are technically very good. Their timing, their marking, they're all that good stuff. The motivation with the dogs and the engagement. It's rare to find a trainer that's on your level when it comes to communicating your thoughts and to like meticulously explaining the little things that bring something to life. I was just watching your video earlier, like 90 minutes ago, on Instagram, that was in reference to how you can use food and hand signals and leash pressure to blend each other together, working sits and downs. And it's something that I've only really noticed outside of you and Tyler Muto. The only other person I've really
Michael
seen,
Ellis.
Michael Ellis, is I was going to say, so I want to hear a little bit more about, what was it that drove you to really realize that that was a thing that people struggle with, is like a lot of people can do it, but not a lot of people can explain. And you know what? Here, I'm sorry. I'm gonna spoil the joke right now.
No, don't do it. Don't do it.
It's gonna help me.
No, do it.
Don't do it.
It's gonna help me
I'm
make
gonna
my.
pour more wine.
It's gonna help me make my point though, and I know, Blake, you're gonna understand exactly what I'm talking about. So you and I are officially legal best friends because when I found out that you do jujitsu, I was like, no fucking way. Wow, because I do too. And so Brent gets annoyed because I talk about it a lot on the podcast and how
every episode talking about jiu-jitsu.
But I saw that
we're gonna talk about it.
Absolutely, yeah. But I saw the things I saw that you do too, and we'll get into it more. But what I wanted to kind of bring up right now was, this struggle right here. You have instructors of a good school. These guys are legit. They're like competition tested. They're good. But when they're explaining something, sometimes they don't explain it right. Like a lot of times it's like, okay, so you grab the lapel grip here, you do this here, and then they just make noises like, and then boom, and they flip the guy, and you're like, no, I know, but what's boom though? One of the
contract the abdomen, twist, rotate, tuck your leg under.
One of my favorite things that one of our instructors does is he'll snap his hand, because when two guys are wearing gis, it's easy to lose your like extremities and all just the white or the blue, like it's just two gis. So he'll do something like this. He'll be like, guy has him in like kind of modified like side back control, so dude's on his back off to the side like this, like a wrestler, stance.
You totally just lost Brent right now. He's
yeah, you're right. But to give you guys an idea, so one guy's on top of another guy, both guys are wearing gis, so like you can't really see much of their actual body because the gis are big. And all he has to do to make this so much more informative for me is when he's explaining things, okay guys, so my left hand, and he does this, and he picks his hand up and snaps it so that when he puts it back down, you can follow it. And then my left foot, and he taps it on the mat so you can find it. And then when he's doing things, and then like, okay, so the flip's halfway over. All right, guys, my right hand. And he points things out. And I'm like, why don't more people point that out? Because I watch BJJ videos online. I watch competition. I watch all these other guys in real life. We go to different gyms and like, try them out. Not that many people think to do that. They just say things and like kind of assume you know what they're saying.
Yeah.
You know what I'm talking about? And in dog training, I noticed a similar thing.
It's interesting that you bring that up because I had gotten to a point where I knew that if I just got my hands on the dog, or if I hung out with the dog, if I spent time with the dog, like I could do it.
Yep.
But why was I struggling to get them to be able to do it? Or the way that I saw it in the beginning was not that way. Why are they struggling to do what I'm showing them to do? Like how come they can't do it?
Right.
It's so easy, right? It's so easy.
Like all you gotta do is this. So you look at it, and certain things that are simple for us that we do without thinking, that are like reflexive at this point, are not necessarily reflexive or instinctual for them.
Right.
And that actually really correlates with BJJ and Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and this is the most fascinating thing. So I don't even know how long I've been training now, maybe 4 years. I might be getting close to like 5.
Okay. Are you purple? I forget.
You want to know what's funny? I should be like a 3-stripe purple, but COVID. And also me going back and forth between Florida and New York. Okay. So I've been a 4-stripe blue for like for like over 2 years now, man. And I train like every day, which is really interesting. But for me, what was really fascinating. So for those of you that are not familiar with the martial art jiu-jitsu,
this is where I leave. I'm just joking.
This is actually really interesting.
Yeah, it is. No, it is. I'm just fucking with you guys.
When you look at this martial art, and this is not to knock other martial arts, But in order to get a black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, it's going to take you anywhere from 7 to 10 years.
Right.
And for those that are hitting 7, you're doing this every single day.
Right. You're a beast. Yeah.
Yeah. Like you're a savage. So this is not a 2-month course. This is not an online thing. This is not my kid was a black belt at 12 years old sort of thing.
Right. Right.
This is, you're committed to this craft. Now, when you look at these black belts, you have a stripe on a black belt, which is a degree.
Right.
It's 3 years for every single black belt. So you'll have some black belts that have 3 stripes on their black belt. That means that like 369, you've been a black belt for 9 years, and it's possible that it's taken you 9 years to get to this place. So you've been doing this for 18 years of your life.
Right.
Wow. Yeah.
But somebody that's been doing anything for 18 years of their life, you were doing things without thinking.
Mm-hmm.
Like your level of thinking is so advanced without realizing it that simple maneuvers you do not think about. So now you have a white belt, a brand new person that goes, I want to learn how to do this.
Yep.
And you go, where do I start? So you try to teach him something, and it's just like, whoa. This was easy for me, but it's clearly not easy for you. Jiu-jitsu has made me a better teacher for dog training, because when you look at a black belt's ability to articulate something as simple as like a hip escape, a basic movement or something, whatever you want to call it.
Right.
Do you remember what it was like when you first started to do that? It was like, wait, how do you do it? And now it's, you do it without thinking. Mm-hmm. I started focusing on how do I break dog training down in more basic movements or basic steps, the way that jiu-jitsu practitioners do. Mm-hmm. And that's actually what's made me a better teacher. They have the ability to do this. If they can teach a random Joe how to get better at this martial art and get to black belt status, there's no reason why we can't do this with dogs. Mm-hmm. It's just a matter of breaking it down the same way. And in the beginning, it might be a little bit boring. In the beginning, it might be so basic that you're like, no, but I just want to get to this point. I just want to do this with my dog.
You're like, patience, grasshopper, patience.
Exactly. And then it's always trying to find that balance with being fair of like, I want to be fair to the dog. I want to, shameless plug, consider the dog.
Hey, what's up, Tyler?
I want to consider the dog in the learning process, in your learning process.
Right.
So I want to slow things down, but I also don't want to drain your pocket and say, we're just going to spend all this time on fundamentals when you have pressing issues. Right. So how do we like bridge that gap of like getting you results as quickly as possible in a way where we're not skimping over things and stressing the dog out and doing too much too soon?
Right. That's huge.
That's a whole nother wormhole and topic within itself, you know?
I mean, you guys should do your own episode just by yourself.
Well, you know, I promise you, Brent, I'm bringing it back to dog training right now. So here's...
Literally, you can count, and the audience knows. Well, at least 20 episodes talking about jiu-jitsu.
There's nothing wrong with jiu-jitsu.
And I love jiu-jitsu. I'm really just hating.
I know.
My discipline, I was a dancer and a performer. So like the rinse, repeat, rehearse, like that's where I pull inspiration from. But I do want to do a martial arts. Like what if there was an influx, just this episode, what if there was an influx of dog trainers doing jiu-jitsu just because?
Dude, that's a thing.
A lot of them do.
Yeah?
Yeah, a lot of them do.
Yeah.
Oh, well, fuck, maybe I'm just behind. I'm
I
behind.
just want you to know that I'm being considerate of the both of you, because we spend time talking about jiu-jitsu and then we spend time talking about Dancing with the Stars. So I'm here for the both of you guys.
Okay? You did your research. Well, thanks, man.
He's like, welcome to considerthedogtrainer.com. But yeah, man, so to tie it back in a little bit, and you were talking about it's easy for the black belt, not necessarily the white belt. And it's easy for the more experienced dog trainer and not necessarily for the client or the newer dog trainer. Mm-hmm. What I found to be very interesting, now I'm speaking from the perspective of the newer dog trainer, is Brent and I like to bring up this point, is for newer dog trainers, it's imperative, especially in today's day and age, how training has just advanced so crazy with social media. You have to know your disciplines, not just food work, not just leash work, not just remote collar, not just all these different things. Be good at all of it. However, to not overwhelm somebody like a white belt, pick one, find a game and work your game. And obviously, the job of the competitors to like not let you find the game because they have their game, right? So it's the whole thing of like, well, the dog is reactive or whatever, but I know what I know, get really good at that one thing, get super good. And then as you get a little bit better, blue belts explore. All right, that's the difference in a white and a blue. Like good white belts versus brand new blue belts is now you're good enough at your game that you can deviate off the game. Because if something goes sideways, you can find your way back.
Yeah.
Right. Purple belts, really solid blue belts. They explore more and more and more. And what somebody told me totally changed my perspective in jiu-jitsu and in dog training. When you become a black belt, it's the day you become a white belt again. That's when jiu-jitsu is new to you all over again. And you just try everything because you have what you need now to really explore as far as you can, because you'll never find yourself in a position to where you can't find your way back home. And from a dog training perspective, younger trainers struggle, in my experience, a lot with things like, I feel awkward when I walk into somebody's house for the first time. I don't know them. I'm in their home. I'm telling them what to do. It's like a private lesson situation. Or I know my stuff, but I'm not quite comfortable commanding a group of 8 people with 8 different dogs and, and stuff like that. And so I'll notice that, and they do a good job. They stick to the script, and it's good. They do their thing. But I notice the real experienced guys, like jiu-jitsu players, they're calm and they're cool and they play around and they make jokes and they do their thing because they're comfortable with, like, all right, guys, let's get back to work, and then they jump right back into the dog training.
Yeah.
So that was kind of what I wanted to bring up, and I wanted to hear your thoughts on. Agree, disagree, or it's nice, I think, for the newer trainers, stick to a plan, get good at something, a very viable method, something that's like ridiculous, of course, but then adventure when you're solid in this.
Yeah, well, I think that the biggest thing is, what is it that on average the dog and the owner need consistently? That's actually why I spent time putting out the communication course. In one of my last videos on Consider the Dog, I talk about the pieces that make up a relationship, and there's so many things that go into it, and there's so many people who like focus on this and focus on that, and they're all really, really important. But it's very hard to do any of that stuff when you can't communicate clearly and effectively to your dog. So let's focus on basic communication, something that you can do using these things. And then from there, if you can communicate to your dog, now you can jump into this, now you can jump into that, now you can focus on building routine, now you can focus on building rules, or teaching this or teaching that or stopping this. And if I was to sum up communication, there's really kind of only 3 things that you need to focus on. Or you need to know how to do in order to communicate clearly and effectively. At a very bare basic level, you have to know how to get more of something, you have to know how to get less of something, and you have to know how to condition something.
Yeah.
Condition, basically give meaning. If you know how to give meaning to things, you can give meaning to a leash, a remote collar, to the rules of a game.
I love that.
What time it is with this. You understand how to classically condition. Like that by itself, that starts with fundamentals of teaching, like markers and a reinforcement-based foundation.
Right.
Condition these markers and give meaning. Then I can take the fundamental principles of this to condition this, to condition this. And once I have a basic foundation, we can now problem solve because we have a language. Getting more and getting less of something, getting more of something is essentially your reinforcement.
Right.
Like anything that we do that's going to increase
increase behavior. Yeah.
Right.
We're going to get more of the behavior. We have to understand reinforcement for what it is.
Right.
Reinforcement gets more of behaviors. And I think that's a big problem with like dog training today, is that the world understands the value of reinforcement to an extent, but we don't understand the limitations of what it actually is. Like you don't want to be in the business of reinforcing bad behavior.
Right. And which happens accidentally all the time.
And it's such a common sense thing. But for some reason, like online, you'd be like, oh, well, the dog was lunging at your face. You should have just used positive reinforcement to like,
give it a cookie to make it tell it it's all right.
It's just like, like reinforcement is valuable. I'm not knocking it, but that's not how this works. Reinforcement gets more behavior. So you can teach an alternative behavior, but you have to address the issue at hand. And this is where punishment comes in, which is what gets less of behavior. Obviously, there's more detail to it.
Sure.
But people, for some reason, associate punishment with abuse.
Yes.
That's not what it is.
100%.
I really don't try to get into too much of this, but I do try to make it clear, because if I'm ever going to throw terms around loosely with clients down the road, like we need to reinforce this, we need to punish this, I want my clients to know what that is.
Right.
Some people associate punishment with abuse, and I try to make it clear by saying, look, let's assume that I was being abusive to a dog. However, like I don't know, I was being abusive by way of leash.
Right.
If my dog lunges at your face and I choose to be abusive with the dog, And the next time around that we find ourselves in the same situation, you come around and my dog, with no hesitation, no decrease in likelihood, still lunges at your face. Even though I was abusive to the dog, I didn't punish anything.
Right.
Because I didn't see less of a likelihood of the dog repeating the behavior. So punishment shouldn't be associated with that. I know.
Right.
You know,
it's such an important kind of piece of the puzzle. Reinforce, punishment, condition, and then we can build.
You know, I hear you on that. And I think I want to add to, and this is just like a spitball idea. So people, please don't crucify me. I haven't quite thought this through yet. Something that I thought of, like, as you were saying this, was what is the definition of a punisher, an effective punisher versus cruel and unusual? One of them is effective. And by effective, you cannot overcorrect a dog, because then that loses efficiency, because then the dog shuts down, stresses out, can bite you, or whatever the case. So in order to be effective, you have to be on target. It's our job. I'm very upfront about this with clients and stuff like that. It's our job as trainers, just even if we were doing strictly pure positive work, it's going to be stressful. We're changing the dog's life around. We're building new habits. We're destroying old habits. We're doing all these things, even if it's the most motivational, lighthearted training you've ever seen. Just by the nature of the beast, it's going to be stressful because it's different. It's change. That being said, not my job to stress the dog any more than is absolutely necessary. Now, there is some stress that will be necessary. There's some change that's necessary, especially if a dog's lunging at someone's face. I have one right now. It's a cattle dog.
I love cattle dogs.
I love cattle dogs. He's a cutie too.
I grew up with 4 of them, so assholes.
He's a little stubby thing. He's cute, man. But proper, effective, efficient corrections, that is the difference. Did it even help, or were you just punishing this poor dog? You know, or a different word. Were you just wasting your time?
Exactly. Yeah.
You know, so that's kind of the delineation that popped into my head right now, was like, is what you're doing working? Because if it's not, then you're just correcting. There is no upside. You're just correcting this dog.
Another way to look at it is people go, well, what do you mean about like punishment, this and that? I was like, well, the dog technically defines what is punishment or what is punishing and what is reinforcing.
Yeah.
You see what I mean? Like, I try to tell people this all the time. If you, Brent, were abused by a gentleman with a beard like me, who has a same color shirt, same style hair, and I'm trying to, I don't know, like, let's say you're a dog. I try to teach you to sit, and every single time that you sit, I walk over to you
and touch me. You're like, this is not positive. Yeah.
If you're viewing that as like, oh my gosh, I really don't enjoy that, I could technically be punishing that.
Yeah, true. Right. Yeah. What does the dog perceive as reinforcement or punishment?
Right.
Yeah.
Have to see that, and like punishment could be anything. It could be abusive. It doesn't have to be reinforcement. Really
could be the most. Yeah, it could be something weird, like go sniff. You know, that's
right.
Yeah. So when people understand things for what they actually are, it gets away from all the what is politically correct and what is online. Let's keep it simple.
Yeah.
Do we want to get more of this behavior? Let's find a way to reinforcement. Do we want to get less of this? Let's punish in a way that makes sense to the dog or the dog.
Well, I was just with a client yesterday. This is a client who kind of a timid puppy, did obedience training when it was 4 to 6 months old. They just moved to a new house. Because they got a house, they gave the dog all this freedom. They got rid of the crate, they got rid of everything. And within a month, the dog starts getting territorial of the new house and starts barking at postmen and doing all this stuff. Because prior to this, they lived on the 3rd story of an apartment and they didn't have to deal with this stuff. And I went to go do a follow-up. I give free follow-ups for the rest of the dog's life. You know, I follow up with them, make sure it's a rescue dog, make sure it doesn't ever have to go back to the rescue. So I'm looking at what's going on. I'm reading the dog's body language. And the funny thing is the dog knows me and likes me. Should know, like should be happy to see me. And when I walk in, the dog is like, who the F is that? And I'm just like, uh-oh, relationship. Something's wrong here. So I see the dog is pierced up against the owner's like, rah, 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 rah. And I'm just like, guys, put her over there. And they're like, you want to sit, a down? You want a bed command? I said, no, just literally grab her leash, put her over there. And then they're like, but no commands? And I was like, no, just grab her, remove her from you. And she calms down. And then I go to give him a hug. The dog freaks out and guards them. Right? I said, grab her, move her over there. Grab her, move her over there. We did that 4 or 5 times. Then the dog relaxed. And then the dog went, hey, I know you, right? Just something so simple like that. Just so simple where there's that was the punishment. That was I'm not going to reinforce this. I'm not going to support you on this. I'm just going to remove you from this. And
the big thing with that to add is understanding that we have a job, we have a responsibility, we have roles that we have to play. And dogs are such good companions, and they're such instinctual companions that when a responsibility is not being done on another family member or pack member's end, you will have certain dogs, and the majority of dogs, that will try to step up to the plate and help in any way that they see fit. What tends to happen, and you hear this all the time, you're like, oh, but you don't understand. My dog is actually really nervous, or my dog is really skittish, or my dog is really insecure. Those are the dogs that tend to be the dogs that get territorial or get possessive or develop extreme separation anxiety and all of these things. And a lot of the reason is because in their eyes, when their pack or their family member or their human is not doing certain things, let me try to handle the responsibility. Now, if I'm a nervous dog and I feel I have to guard the territorial den or the space, or if we're out on a walk, our bubble as things are approaching us, I'm going to look to create space in any way that I can. So this is the majority of like leash reactivity, is a dog that is insecure and nervous and saying, stay away from us, we're really nervous. And I'm reactive. What happens when a dog is reactive? The owner tends to pull that dog away. Right.
The dog gets the space it was asking for.
Yeah. Or that owner pulls their dog away and gets space.
Or on the street, they just walk past,
Yeah. Got the job done.
Yeah.
It's okay.
Handled it, guys.
I got it.
I love explaining that to people with mailman syndrome.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. So understanding the value that space has, how to control space so that a dog can feel, okay, it's not my job. So they can feel at the very least relieved with that, opens up the window for us to then start the counter conditioning process, which is basically changing the way that a dog might at this point involuntarily feel about a situation. But it's very hard to start the process of getting you to feel better when I can't control the space and show you that I've got it, I'm responsible for it. This is no longer your job. I got a promotion.
Right.